All right, welcome in to Are You Ready for a Podcast, the official podcast of the Are You Ready for Some Football Fantasy Football League. This is episode 5, and I'm doing well. Got another win this week. Joe, you got back in the win column. How's things going?
Things are going great. We're playoff, like the early playoff picture is starting to shape up, I feel like.
For sure. Also, we have a new background. We now have a corporate encroachment on the league. So it's the Are You Ready for a Podcast presented by AT&T. They paid nothing for this, obviously. But let's go ahead and get started with the recap of what went down in week 4. And I don't think we can start anywhere else. Well, I guess you could make an argument that meant we could start on the Monday night games, but I'd like to start with the new league scoring record, which was set by Grant with 170.82 points, with a big win, 170-98 over Austin. Austin continues to run into terrible luck. His defense is just not performing this year. Joe, what's your take on this one?
Well, it's Grant setting the scoring record. I think that's kind of the story of the league this week. And he did it with a bad Travis Kelce game, excuse me. Yeah, really what first thing I've written down on Grant's team is Cordell Patterson. What the hell? Just what the hell? 3 touchdowns and getting to use basically a receiver as one of your running back spots when Grant has, we thought running back 2 issues. That's a huge boost for him. I don't think this touchdown production is sustainable, but the workload he's getting could be. Saquon looked like he was fully back. For Austin, outside of the running backs, not a ton of positives, but the running backs still look good, which was a concern a couple weeks ago for him. So 2 good Clyde games in a row. Najee continues to get a ton of work. Those are, that's 2 good. That's a good foundation for him. Rest of the team needs to step it up. I mean, Antonio Brown dropped a touchdown that was in his hands, so that would have put him over 100 points, close to 110. I'm interested. The other X factor for Austin would be with George Kittle and Trey Lance is now starting. I would be interested to see like how that affects his production. Is it the rookie looking at the tight end a lot, increase his target share, or is it he seems like Deebo Samuel? Is he going to be locked in on Deebo Samuel and they're going to run the ball? You would imagine a whole lot. So I'm interested to see how that works for George Kittle's target share. But yeah, other than that, and I guess that with Deebo, that would affect Grant too. So I'm interested to see that. So yeah, that's about all I have. Grant just continues the roll and looking like the best team in the league through 4 weeks.
Yeah, another great performance from Grant. His first time being the leading scorer on a week this season, and did it in a big way, breaking the scoring record, which he already had. Of course, tied with Hunter in back-to-back weeks last year to the 100th point, which was bizarre. But yeah, I mean, I think the Cordell Patterson thing, but regardless of what we think about his future for the rest of the season, he's been great so far. I did own him for 1 minute earlier this year and then dropped him. So that's not a great move by me. But yeah, great pickup for Grant. And then, the rest of his lineup just continues to be solid. Obviously, 21 points from the defense is a big boost when you're trying to break the scoring record. But his best player didn't do much. So, there's probably offset. There's probably a lot more weeks where you get 21 from Travis Kelce and 4 from the defense. And then for Austin, this is actually his second best week of the season. And I think there are, his running backs are coming around, like you said, which is great news for him. I do have my biggest question about this show is, Grant obviously 4-0. He obviously set the scoring record this week, but how for real do you think his team is? How he's been in the top half of scoring every week this year, but he has had some schedule luck for sure in getting those 4 wins. And do you think that this is really the hands down best team in the league, or do you think he's just one of them and he's in a great position record wise?
Yeah, I think there's probably about 4, maybe 5 teams right now that could make their case for best team, but I mean, you're still leading in points scored, and there's Thomas and Collin are also 3-1, have gotten off to really strong starts. So I think there's a few teams that can make the case, but I don't know. Like with if Saquon comes around, I think it's Grant right now. We'll see if Cordero Patterson's he's not going to score 20 to 30 a game, but if he can keep up steady production, he's got a reliable running back too. Then, and then DK Mike Evans really good. Travis Kelce, just as reliable as tight ends ever get. So and of course Dak. So I think I would say Grant is number one right now. I think he could keep it up, but I wouldn't be surprised if three or four other teams come in and take the top spot from him.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of I think where I am too. I think you can't really argue against it being a top spot now, but I think that Cordero I think scored 32 points and 17 snaps this week. So that's obviously not going to continue, and I think that that's important for him because between Cordero and Debo, I think that's really what puts the team over the top. And I don't know how much confidence you have in those guys, but for me, I think that Debo I have more confidence in, but Cordero I don't think is going to keep this going. Although I didn't think he would do it in the first place, which is why I dropped him after 1 minute. So
yeah, but like half PPR with like I don't know if you're getting targeted that much as a running back, then I think that's a pretty big thing. So I think he's not going to have these 32-point weeks, but I think he could have sustainable double-digit weeks. It seems like the Falcons like using him a lot.
Yeah, then I think my big point on Austin is that he's still just searching for someone to play in his flex. I thought Tim Patrick was a good signing. I thought that he'd be able to do that, but then 5 points and Tony Pollard just hasn't quite got it done the last couple of weeks. So I think that he needs to play the waiver wire and try to get somebody reliable that you can put in that spot.
Well, he picked up Josh Gordon, so we'll see if he can fill in that role.
Yeah, I mean, he's got flash. I don't see how that can go wrong, really.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. The next matchup, Ben versus me. I had the same most points in the league this week. Big win, 143 to 102. Obviously, another ridiculous Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill game that basically got me the victory. Joe, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, the return of the stack right there. I don't know what the hell the Eagles were doing on the last touchdown. Tyreek was just wide open. It didn't seem like anybody was guarding him. But I mean, that was whatever, 18 points for you or whatever it would be. And so yeah, I think I'm interested to see your team really good. Your running back 2 is kind of the big, huge question mark. Once Christian McCaffrey gets back, might be this week. If not this week, then it'll be next week. So I am interested to see what you do at running back 2 because Miles Sanders, they're just not giving him the ball. We talked about it last week after the Monday night game. He got the ball a little bit more, but still not a lot. So you don't really have a lot of good options there. You picked up Brandon Bolden, Michael Carter. I wouldn't say those are the most inspiring options. So we'll see what you do there. And we're talking about running back problems. Ben has some major ones. Chris Carson seemed like he got hurt, might not play this week with his I think it was a neck. And Myles Gaskin, it's getting bad in Miami for their running back situation. And those are Ben has 3 running backs on the roster, those 2 guys and Mark Ingram, who I think is useless for fantasy. So just major issues there for him. His team, he still has Waller and a bunch of receivers and Aaron Rodgers, but like if you just have that bad of running back problems, like you're not gonna go far in the league, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ben's running back issues are obvious. I think that Deontay Johnson and Waller and Cup are gonna have to carry him, like we've said, along with Rodgers. And if he's losing Chris Carson this week, he's in real trouble. But I think that from my standpoint, I agree sort of with your assessment on Sanders. And I just don't think I can trade him right now. I mean, so you can't cut him.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
And he got 28 carries weeks 1 and 2. So I mean, I don't know if they just hate him now, or I mean, Gainwell's gotten a little more work, but not enough to justify. I mean, I think the real problem is that Jalen Hurts has like 87 pass attempts in the last 2 weeks or something like that. So I think he may come around. I mean, I'm going to have to keep playing him at this point. So we'll see, but definitely a cause for worry. But so far, I mean, this is my third time being number 2 in the league and scoring for a week in only 4 weeks. So I'm happy about that. And then, yeah, I mean, looking at Ben's team, I mean, he's got to do something for a running back. He's got to make a move. Obviously, to me, Darren Waller's the big trade chip that I think, if he can work something out, get rid of Waller, stream tight ends, and maybe solve his running back 2 issues, that might be worth doing for him.
Yeah, or maybe like package 2 receivers. I don't know, like how willing he would be to give up on Cup, like especially with the start he's gotten off to, or even like 2 guys like Deontay and T. Higgins. I don't know, but
I don't think it's too late to do like Gaskin plus Devontae Smith or Cooper Kupp and like get somebody that he could play.
Yeah, I mean the problem is just like so many teams need running back depth and running backs, and some teams need receivers and flexes and all that. Running backs are a way bigger need across the league.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll keep going down the line, which brings us to you with a 130-point to 104-point win over Morgan. Really, really good performance from your team. For a while, it looked like you were going to be up in the 150s, and then things sort of fizzled out. Had some guys limp off and come back. So up and down week, the David Montgomery injury obviously stands out as the big negative, but 130 points, got another win, got to be feeling good after this one.
Yeah. The David Montgomery injury sucks, but I did pick up Damian Williams on like Friday or Saturday. So that came in really clutch. So be able to use him for the next few weeks while Montgomery's out. I'm really hoping that, it hitting 130 without AJ Brown too, I think pretty good. I think my team is pretty high ceiling. We've seen some inconsistencies in it this year, but with a couple of underperforming weeks, but now that's 2 out of 4 really good weeks. So interested to see that. I think Urban Meyer, if he's had quite the week, hopefully he and somewhere in that week is learned that, hey, James Robinson, he's pretty good. Like keep giving him the ball, keep giving him goal line work. It'll work out. So we'll see there.
He got 95% of the snaps and Carlos Hyde's hurt, so I don't think you have much to worry about.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. When Carlos Hyde gets back, Urban Meyer seems to love Carlos Hyde. For Morgan, yeah, that's true. For Morgan, Joe Mixon got hurt. He did pick up Samaje Perine. I still think that's a major issue for him. Like a lot of teams, running back is not a strength for Morgan. Joe Mixon is easily his best one. So not having him for 2-3 weeks, however long it is, that's going to hurt. Other than that, I guess side note, I guess I'll have a little bit of a quarterback decision to make. I think I feel pretty good about Jalen Hurts, but if Trey Lance just lights the world on fire, the DMs are open if anybody wants them, by the way. Then that'll be. I don't like having to make those decisions because I thought I was just set with Jalen Hurts, but I guess if Trey Lance can make things kind of wacky for me here. But other than that, yeah, not really much to worry about or think about. I think Morgan had an okay week. Getting negative from the Saints defense is tough, but 130 will get you beat most weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I think Morgan 104 points, taking the loss is annoying, but not a disaster. And yeah, I think you're right about that. His running back concerns are big. It doesn't seem like the Joe Mixon injury is too severe, so he should be able to make it through it. Actually, to see McLaurin have another good week was big for me because I had some questions about Heineke, but McLaurin's had 2 out of 3 great games with him. So I think I maybe risen on Morgan's team just a touch this week, even despite the loss. But yeah, like everybody else, I mean, the running back is a big, big question mark for him that he's going to have to work on. And there's just not a lot of options out there.
I think, I think only getting, you can go ahead. Okay. You can go.
So yeah, I mean, I like, James Robinson, I like Kareem Hunt, and I think that you can plug in Samuel Williams for 4 or 5 weeks and he's not going to be a disaster. I mean, he's, probably more of a running back 2 than a running back 1. But I mean, you could argue that David Montgomery was like a fringe back in running back 1 anyway. So I don't think it's going to really kill your team. I mean, maybe cost you 3 to 5 wins a week, but I think that's, the least of your worries at this point.
Yeah, and for Morgan, like I think he got Piron for 15. I think that's really good value. I thought he was gonna have to pay up more for him. Um, and yeah, I think Terry, I think in a weird way, Heineke is kind of good for Terry because he might just be locked in on throwing in the ball and just his target share I would imagine is higher than he obviously he got like 1/4 with Fitzpatrick, but I imagine his target share is will be higher than it will be when Fitzpatrick comes back.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so we'll keep going, and now we'll get to one of two extremely tight Monday Night Football matchups this week, and that's Hunter's 114 to 110 win over Dan. Just huge, huge win for Hunter, in my opinion. I think he was got the unfortunate breaks last week with the McCaffrey injury, and I think that karma was on his side in this one, as Dan had two guys go out with 0 points in the first quarter. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, you're right. With Grant coming up this week, I think that was absolutely a win Hunter needed to have with no McCaffrey. Pretty good performance for him. He's still, Hunter has not done a very good job on his starting receiver situation this year. He keeps starting underperformers and benching the guys that do better. Outside of DJ Moore is a locked and loaded, probably wide receiver one for the rest of the year. He's a stud, but started Odell this week when Corey Davis and Kenny Galladay both had better games. And so that's something to figure out for Hunter. I think if you're Dan, I think it's a little bit. It's time to be a little bit worried about the Saints' offense. Kamara didn't have a target, and it's just like their offense just seems kind of anemic this year. And I think that's something a little something to worry about with Dan. Tony Jones did get hurt, so I guess that would maybe even be a further bump up in his production. So maybe not something to worry about. But the Saints offense like just does not look very good through 4 weeks. And then he's getting this James Conner touchdown production. Is that sustainable? We know that they don't really like going to Chase Edmonds down there, the Cardinals. But so if they're just locked and loaded with James Conner as their goal line guy, then I guess that's a pretty startable option for Dan. I would not have thought it was a couple weeks ago, but Chark got hurt, and Logan Thomas got hurt, and Dan's receivers still aren't very good, but he's still got the two guys. It seems like he has a third running back in Connor. So if he figures out his receivers, he's still 2-2. He can be fine, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, definitely he's gotten a couple of cheap ones this year, and it looked like he might get another one for a second, but he didn't manage to pull it out. But yeah, for Hunter, just huge win. He does have good running back depth, and he keeps playing the wrong receivers. But now that it looks like McCaffrey may come back sooner than later, and he's got Zach Moss, Darrell Henderson, Trey Sermon, Mike Davis, Chase Edmonds. I think he's in a great position to maybe package one of them with one of his receivers, make a move, see if he can get, a good starting running back that he can maybe make his decisions a little bit easier week to week. I don't know how easy it's going to be to do that, but I think at this point he's got so many options that he may want to consolidate a couple of players like in a 2-for-1 trade and try to get a more consistent startable guy. And for Dan, I mean, he just is so reliant on Henry and Kamara that like 36 points between the two of them is still not enough, which is, which is a tough position to put yourself in. But he just keeps getting nothing out of his wide receivers. I do think that now that Latavius looks like locked and loaded Ravens starter, that's a guy he can start week in and week out. I just think that he may need to make a move for a wide receiver.
I agree.
So we'll keep going with the real barn burner on Monday night, which was Collin sneaking by Zach 106 to 104. We'll hear from Collin later on this matchup, but really, really close Monday night and a really good win. He was in an awkward position of having Eckler and Mike Williams go against the quarterback Justin Herbert, but we got it done. Austin Eckler looks like a huge value as probably a top 5 guy rest of the season. Joe, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's just a brutal loss for Zach. That in a 14-week season, nobody's season is over at 0-4. But you were talking about how 3-0 teams usually make the playoffs, so you figure the inverse is true for 0-3 teams. Now Zach's 0-4. That nobody's season's over yet, but that does feel like one that he absolutely had to have, and one that if he misses out on the playoffs, if he does make a little bit of a comeback and misses out on the playoffs by a little bit, that's going to be one he's thinking on for the offseason. But Jonathan Taylor for Collin, first good game. Got to give him some that's got to give him a little bit of hope there. Panthers defense against the Cowboys. I don't know what we were thinking there, Collin. Cowboys have had a really good offense all year. Panthers, like, I understand they've had, a good defense, but have not really played the best offenses. So almost cost them, but did not. And then I still feel weird about this matchup and all this because I still like Zach's team, but it just feels like 0-4 is a little too much to overcome. He's still got the three running backs. Three running backs are still good. I think, Brandon Cooks, I still like. He'll be in a ton of positive game scripts this year. It's going to be tough for Davis Mills to play worse than he did. And then Marvin Jones, they don't have Chark anymore in Jacksonville. So I would imagine his target share increases a little bit. So I still kind of like his team. It's just like 0-4 is just, and Herbert has seemed to gotten back on track. Just 0-4 is just such a tough hill to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. He's got the ceiling. He's got the Chubb, Gibson, Zeke, which should give him a big ceiling every week. So I don't know if there's much to do. I think he's just gotta hope that form will come back around and he'll get some more fortunate matchups in the second half. But you're right, luck definitely has not been on his side so far, and he's in a really tough position. And the thing is that he really. I mean, I was trying to look and see like, okay, well, maybe he's just had a rough go of the schedule and he's played Thomas, who we like, Ben, who we don't necessarily like, Morgan, who we don't really like, and then Collin, who we like. But 2 out of 4 winnable games so far. So it's going to get tougher from there. So I just it's a tough spot for Zach to be in now. He really needed that game. And then we'll go into our last game of the day, which was the 11th and 12th scores of the week. So Thomas got the win with 84 points over Nick with 67. The lowest scoring win on the season. The lowest scoring previous win was, I think, 94 points. So by far the lowest scoring win on the season. Thomas got a cheap one. And Nick's team just laid another egg. I don't know what to say. We thought he'd be really good, and it just isn't panning out so far.
Yeah, these are just the games that are so nice to win. I've won my fair share of them back in the day. Dan's won a lot of them. And getting a win when you score 84 points, you feel a little bit lucky there. So, or maybe a lot bit lucky, but I think it's kind of time for me to come to terms with Nick's team. He was my preseason #1 team. I've kept him in the playoff picture and all the power rankings in the top 6. And I think it's just time for me to come to terms that it's not very good. Allen Robinson just has a nightmare situation now. Justin Fields as a starter doesn't seem to be going to Allen Robinson very much. CeeDee Lamb has not been as good as advertised. Might still turn things around there. Calvin Ridley is getting touchdown vultured by Cordell Patterson, like we talked about earlier with Grant's team. That might come back around, but who knows? He might have taken over the Julio role of just never scoring touchdowns for the Falcons. And then on top of all that, the running backs are a real problem right now. Damian Harris is not really getting the passing work. Doesn't really look that good in the run game. The Bucs running defense is, really good and will stuff anybody, but it's still not encouraging to see. Tyson Williams has now been overtaken by Latavius Murray, it seems like, as the starter there. Javonte Williams is still basically in a split backfield with Melvin. Just a lot of concerns that Tom Brady and Mark Andrews are not able to overcome. Tom Brady didn't throw a touchdown pass on Sunday. Just a lot of problems with Nick's team. Thomas' team is still good. I think he had a little bit of an off week. Didn't get the DeAndre Swift or Dalvin games he would have hoped for, but Thomas' team is still good. He's still fine. There you go, Thomas. Positive things said about your team.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas's team, I was just looking through it because I was like, we liked him. It doesn't seem like he's been doing that well, but now he's 3-1. He's in good shape. He's got wins so far this year, the last 2 weeks with the 7th and the 11th most points of the week. So, that's sort of the opposite of what we're talking about with Zach. When you can win with the 7th and 11th most points, that's a great position to be in going forward because you basically picked up a couple that you shouldn't have. And then for Nick, I agree. The worry is there. He needs Diggs and Ridley and CeeDee Lamb to carry his team now. He's kind of in a similar position to Zach, which you disagree with last week. It seems like you might agree with more.
Yeah,
I think he's got stuff he can make moves. I mean, he's got Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. Needs to move one of those. Needs to package those guys with Damian Harris, try to upgrade. He needs to get some more consistency from the running back position, but he's just gonna have to get a little more schedule luck moving forward, I think. So I don't know. I think there's reason to be concerned for Thomas, but he got to win. I think this Melvin Javonte Williams situation is going to be kind of a nightmare for both guys. I think we think that Javonte might take over in the second half of the season, but so far their touches have been just split down the middle. DeAndre Swift is on a bad team. I think that Thomas's upside maybe isn't what we thought. Although I guess it's hard to say that one down. That's such a bad week, but I think that I have some questions about both teams here, but definitely a big win for Thomas and definitely a bad loss for Nick.
yeah. I know it sounds kind of weird, but I think Thomas's team, I agree, doesn't have the highest ceiling, but I think it has a pretty high floor. I know he just put up 85, but I do think DeAndre and Dalvin have generally pretty high floors. Dalvin with all the work he gets, DeAndre with some of the passing work. I think Keenan Allen generally is pretty safe. Kyle Pitts is getting enough of the target share there, just hasn't really scored because Cordell Patterson's scoring all their touchdowns. And then, Robert Woods got a garbage time touchdown. Is it time to worry about him? But, I think you can, we might get a little bit of positive regression of the mean there. So I agree. Outside of Kyler, I don't think it's like the highest upside, but I do think in most weeks it'll be a pretty high floor.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for the recap. I think it's really close games the last couple of weeks. Some good finishes on Monday Night Football. So it's been fun to watch this year for sure. Now we'll move on to the controversial segment of the show, which is of course the weekly power rankings. And I think this week, some things are starting to become more clear, at least from my perspective. So I guess actually let's do like we did last week. We'll start by looking through the standings. Looking through where everyone is in terms of records, which is what matters for making the playoffs. And Grant's in a great position at the top, 4-0. He's second in scoring. He's averaging, right around 125 points a game. So, good start to him, to season for him. And then me and Collin and Thomas are at 3-1, right behind. Good position to be in. Only game out of first place. You can drop one and still be okay. Remember that you're looking for mainly a 500 record to make the playoffs. And then we got Joe, you, Hunter, and Dan are game back at 2-2. Still in decent position. Can't afford too many losses, but in definitely playoff position. 1-3 is where you start to get worried. That's Nick, Ben, and Austin. There's probably room for one of those guys to make a move, but is there room for 2 or 3 of those guys to make a move? I'm not too sure, especially with Zach at 0-4. He's got a lot of ground to make up. So, Joe, anybody besides Zach who you think is gonna be in a bad position so far? I guess be the way to word that.
No, I kind of think you're going to see in the power rankings it's a little bit closer. My power rankings are a little bit closer to kind of how the standings are in records. I think in the first couple weeks you can kind of still position the teams you like more, but I think now that records are starting to shake out and we're starting to see more consecutive performances from players and you can get better judgments of them. I think the standings are starting to even up with the power rankings a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we may have pretty similar power rankings this week. I don't know that.
Yeah, I agree.
That things are starting to settle out a little bit. And for me, that starts with Zach at number 12. I don't feel 100% about this. I think that I could have put him above a couple of teams ahead of him, but 1-4 is just such a tough spot to be in. And I think that his running backs have been good, but he hasn't got enough from everywhere else. And they just haven't been the value that he paid for them. So I got Zach at number 12 for the second straight week.
Okay, I kept Ben at 12. I think his running back situation is really, really bad right now. And he's got basically three guys. He's got Cup, Waller, and Deontay. And we'll see about Devontae Smith and T. Higgins, but those still aren't really proven week to week commodities yet. And even Chris Carson can be a little touchdown dependent, and that's kind of his one running back. So I just hate his running back situation right now.
Yeah, that's a fair ranking. I got Ben at one spot ahead at 11. But the running back situation is obviously a big disaster. I just think being a 4 puts you in such a hole that it's going to be a hard time to climb out of. Whereas Ben, if he gets lucky, gets a couple of wins, and then maybe hit somebody off the waiver wire, he could find himself right in it again at 1 and 3. I guess I shouldn't be making that big of a deal out of a 1-game difference, but it really does seem like a big deal to me at this point. The one thing I will say about Ben is that I'm not sure why he hasn't made more of a play for some of these waiver wire running backs. Like I think when you're in the
I agree.
in 1 game of Samaje Perine or a couple of games of Zach Moss might make a huge difference.
Yeah, no, you're right. We're getting to the point in the schedule where you literally with the waiver wire, you're trying to buy wins, and especially if you're 1 and 3, 0 and 4, you're trying to make that playoff positioning push. That if you can buy a win here and there, if you can get a waiver guy for $30 and it'll help you get a win, I think that's an obvious move that Ben needs to start doing.
Yeah.
So my number 11. So I moved Nick all the way down to number 11. I just think, again, a nightmare running back situation right now. Again, basically has 3 guys like we talked about. I mean, Tom Brady too, but is the touchdown production for him, the touchdown pass production seemed to regress a little bit this week. So, you got Diggs and Ridley, and then I guess Edie, who has had a couple of bad weeks. And I think I'm starting to realize that Nick's team just has a whole lot of problems. And so I dropped him, I believe 5 or 6 spots. I forgot what I had him last week.
Yeah, 5 last week.
Yeah.
Down 6 spot. Yeah. I've got Austin at number 10. I'm sticking with the theme of the records being a big deal. I think that, Austin beat me last week. He really wasn't able to build on that momentum. He's only scored over 100 points once this year. I just don't see the upside as much with Austin. I think that he's still, shuffling through flex guys. I don't think that Josh Jacobs is the answer. Not Josh Jacobs, Josh Gordon is the answer. And Najee Harris and Clyde, while they have been better, haven't done enough to carry him so far. I mean, Najee's running back 7 and Clyde running back 21 this year. That's good, but when you don't have really strength the rest of your team, then that's not going to be enough. The Kittle has really, really bit him hard this year. So I got Austin at 10.
I have Zach at 10. I like Zach's team, but I could not justify putting an 0 and 4 team higher than 10. That was the highest I was willing to go. It's just a tough hill to climb. I wouldn't be shocked if he did it. And I'm kind of comparing him to the other 1 and 3 teams. So I think his roster is still good enough to where only being a game back is not, of like the teams around him, is not as big of a deal. But it's just gonna be really tough for him to make the playoffs. I mean, you're talking about 7 and 3 in the last 10 weeks, which, if just think about it as like the first 10, like how many teams get off to a 7 and 3 start like that we've ever had, not many. We usually have pretty good parity. So it's that's just a really tough hill for him to climb.
Yeah. And I think, I agree with that. I do kind of like putting him up there just because you think his team is a little bit better, but I don't know that it's enough better to justify moving him up above some of these 1 and 3 teams, because I mean, it's just so much easier to go 6 and 4 than 7 and 3. Even if the team is worse. So at number 9, I got Morgan. I flipped Morgan and Austin this week. I think that, Morgan, I'm not sure that his team is that much better, but I think that he's in a much better position being 2 and 2 versus Austin being 1 and 3. So that's what made me move him up 1. I think that, Jacobs and Mixon is still going to be fine. I don't think Mixon's going to be out that long. He's got Perine and Devontae Adams and Terry McLaurin are still a great wide receiver duo. I told you during the recap that I moved a little bit higher on Morgan this week, and not much higher, but I got him.
Yeah, I was kind of flip flopping on this between the two of them. I settled on Austin at 9. So I think Morgan picking up Piron was a big thing for him, and Mixon not missing much time. But I still think their teams are close. I have Austin at 9. I think the running back situation is good. I think his receivers will be fine. Um, I'm curious to see about Kittle, and then the flexes like you were talking about. Just he hasn't figured it out yet. So just a couple big question marks there for Austin, but he still has that kind of running back and receiver baseline, we think right now that he can rely on, but he's got to figure out the rest of his lineup.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think those two are close. Then I got Nick significantly higher than you do. I've got him at 8. I think that I maybe was more down on his receivers than you at the start of the year. But now I think that I'm just higher on his running backs than you are. I still think Javonte Williams could be good. I think that Damian Harris will have good games. I mean, Belichick running backs are always like this. Just because they won bad game doesn't mean that they are bad or going to be bad for the overall course of the season. They just will have bad weeks. But I've got Nick at 8. I think his ceiling's a little bit higher than these other teams, just based on those receivers. I think the Diggs will come around. I think that Ridley will come around. I think they just haven't got touchdowns yet. So I feel okay about Nick at 8. I mean, I don't love it. I don't think he's in a great position. I don't know that he makes the playoffs. I don't like that he's starting Kenneth Gainwell as his running back 2 right now. But I feel okay with him at 8. I think his flex options are far better than any of the other teams we've listed so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as Damian Harris goes, I think he'll have good games, but Nick's kind of forced to start him, and you just never know when that game is going to be. So, I'm definitely lower on his running backs than you are. I have Morgan at 8, like I was talking about with Austin. It's pretty close. Morgan I think has. Maybe you can make a case for Nick with Diggs and Ridley, but I think Morgan probably has the best wide receiver duo in the league with Devontae and Terry. Running backs are good enough. Stafford's been good enough, I guess, and Dawson Knox was a good pickup by him. So, still a couple flex questions, but Morgan's team is I've been kind of fine on it for basically the whole season. I think it's still fine. Yeah, and he's 2-2, which is the other notch he has over Austin.
Yeah, we got the same top 7, which I think we probably have the same team at 7th, which for me is Dan. I think that he's got a couple of lower scoring wins, which is great. And I think they've got his running backs, which is really what elevates him above this bottom 5 for me. But I think the receiver thing is still an issue he's got to work out. And I'm not sure how he does it without moving off of Kamara Henry, which I don't see him doing. So Dan is a firm number 7 for me, staying where he was last week.
Yep, 100% agree. He's at 7 for me. If he can get solid production out of James Conner, I think that's big for him. And he's got Latavius, which is big for him. But yeah, the receiver situation is not good for him. Logan Thomas is hurt right now, which that was thought to be a pretty reliable option at tight end coming into the season. So that's kind of a loss. But yeah, he's still got Russ on the 2 running backs. I think that's good enough to elevate him to 7, but kind of the rest of the roster problems is not good enough to get him into the playoffs for me.
And then top 6, we got the same top 6 as well. And I actually moved Thomas down 3 spots to number 6 after the win. I think, that was an obvious cheap win. I think it's good to have those. And I think he's in a great position at 3-1. But I just have more questions about his team than I did before. Dalvin, I think will be good and will be reliable. I don't necessarily worry about him. I think he's just coming off of an injury. But I just don't know about, DeAndre Swift as much. I sort of think I'm losing a little bit of faith in him, and I'm definitely losing a little faith in Keenan Allen and Robert Woods. So, I think he's a good team. I don't think he's a great team. I think number 6 is a fair ranking for him, which he will not like being moved down 3 after winning. But you know what? That's what it is.
You're braver than I am. I have myself at 6. I think my roster is when healthy is pretty complete, but I just kind of going through it. David Montgomery's hurt, so we don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Damian Williams. Probably not that much of a drop off, but we'll see. TJ Hawkinson is currently questionable. AJ Brown, maybe he plays this week, maybe he doesn't. Amari Cooper is dealing with a couple of different injuries, so team's a little bit banged up.
You're playing me, so I'm gonna be fine.
well, we'll see. We'll get to that later. So a few injury concerns and a couple of still consistency concerns with, Tyler Lockett and Amari and James Robinson when Carlos Hyde gets back, and Kareem Hunt does the touchdown production sustain. So I still like my team. Still, I think it's still pretty complete, but and still pretty good upside when healthy, but dealing with a few injury issues and a few consistency issues.
I think you may be selling yourself a little bit short here. I got Hunter at 5. I had him at 8 last week. Move him up 3 spots. Huge win for him, in my opinion, without McCaffrey to get the win, especially considering he's got Grant coming up, and it looks like McCaffrey may be back soon. So I think big boost for Hunter this week. I just think he's got a lot of startable guys, but not a lot of great guys outside of McCaffrey. I don't think Lamar is top half quarterback one anymore, which is weird to say, but I mean, he still runs around. I just don't think the passing volume is what it was a couple of years ago. And so I think that caps Hunter's upside a little bit. But he's 2-2 and he's getting the best player fantasy back. So I couldn't put him any lower than 5. I feel like I could move him up, but I like him at 5 here.
Yeah, I agree. I also am at 5. Huge win. I think getting one win without McCaffrey is really big. Like he still has good running back depth. One of the best running back depth teams in the league. And then he's got good receiver depth. It's just who does he start? He's still got to figure that out. Other than that, his team, I still like his team. It's the floor is I still think pretty good. Ceiling might not quite be there, but I think if you got a high floor and you're 500 and you're getting your best player back, what?
And you have Christian McCaffrey.
And yeah, Christian McCaffrey. I think that's a pretty good spot to be in going forward.
Yeah, I mean, my concern for him was really if he loses this week, McCaffrey's out 2 more weeks. It looks like none of that's going to happen. So,
and he has Grant this week.
Yeah. All right, so we move on to number 4, which is where I have you. I was tempted to put you a little bit higher up, but you're 2-2, and that's really what holds you back. In a game behind the teams ahead of you in the standings. And then the Montgomery injury, I don't think Williams will be a big drop off, but I also think that Montgomery is just really good. So maybe Williams will be a drop off. I just think, your team is deep, and deep with really top end guys, which is kind of what happens when you don't spend on the top guys in the draft and you build up the mid rounds. And I think that James Robinson looks like a running back 1 again to me, like he did last year. His usage is getting better. And so if he can be a running back 1 again last year, then I don't think there's many holes in your team. I think your depth is really good. Kareem Hunt was just a sneaky good value. And Jalen Hurts, I told you all summer, I think he's going to be top 3 quarterback, and that's playing out. So I like your team at 4.
I have Collin at 4. I think it's pretty close between him and Thomas. But I had the same top 4 my top 4 last week all won. I think Thomas's team had a little bit of an underperforming anomaly game, so I just stuck with the same top 4. Collin, good win. Really sweated it out there at the end. And I still think receiver depth is pretty good. I don't think the Mike Williams bad game is too much to worry about. Kind of the only concern I think would be maybe Cortland Sutton. He the other receivers there just keep getting hurt. Now he went from Teddy to Drew Lock this week, but the target share hasn't really increased for him since Judy and KJ Hamler went down. So I don't know how startable he will be going forward. I think he's still okay, but not maybe as high of upside as I previously thought. Still like his team though. 3-1's really good spot to be in. Getting the good Jonathan Taylor game is encouraging. So Collin's in a good place moving forward.
Fair enough. And then at number 3, I got myself. I think that, I've been playing really well so far. 3 number 2 weeks and number 1 in scoring. And a 3-1 record is all good. And I'm obviously happy about that. I do feel like I might be in trouble. The injuries have been kind of mounting, especially over the last week. So it was hard for me to move myself up more than 1 spot. I think that, Gronk being hurt, Claypool being hurt, looks like McCaffrey's coming back. So I'm losing Chuba. makes me slightly concerned going into bye weeks. Judy's already on my arm. I'm not sure how my depth is going to be going into bye weeks. So that's kind of what kept me from putting me ahead of the teams in front of me. But I did have myself up one spot to 3.
Okay. I have Thomas at 3. I think I think I'm just generally a little bit higher on his team than you are. I think Keenan Allen's good. I'm still holding out for Robert Woods and for Kyle Pitts. I still think they'll be better as the season goes on, and I still think Dalvin and DeAndre Swift will be fine. So, and I still think Kyler is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy. So all that combined, I think Randall Cobb was a good pickup. I think Green Bay is going to use him. I think that's a guy that you can plug into your starting lineup and feel okay about. He's not going to have 2 touchdowns every week, but I do think he'll have a good amount of targets because Aaron Rodgers really likes him. And so I think Thomas' team is pretty good. Being a 3-1 and getting that cheap win that he did is really good. And 3-1 is I have the 4-3 or the 4-3-1 or better teams and as my top 4 because I think that's just a big advantage to have over the 2-2 teams.
Yeah. I got Collin at 2. I think you had him at 4. The reason I'm a little bit higher on his team is just because I think his running backs are so good. I think Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler is a huge top tier duo. And then I think Godwin, Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams, these receivers are really good too. And when you're really strong at running back and receiver, and you have arguably the number 1 quarterback with Josh Allen, I just really like that team. So I'm leaving him at 2.
Yeah. I have you at 2. I only concern would be a running back 2, but other than that, I think your receivers are good and you have really high upside with Mahomes and Tyreek. So, and you'll get Gronk back eventually, and he's obviously a touchdown threat. So, I still have you at 2. You just keep putting out these huge performances, lead the league in scoring still. So, I think you at 2 is a pretty easy case to make.
And then at 1, I mean, there's only one case to make, which is Grant. Just broke the scoring record, 4-0, hadn't lost since middle of last season. Basically, he's got an 8-game win streak. Not much we need to talk about here. Grant's an easy hand down on 1 team.
Yeah, there's no argument. 4-0, and he just set the scoring record. There's basically all I have to say.
We both had him at 1 last week, so he won it.
Yeah, his running back 2 situation might be figured out a little bit, which is also his biggest concern. So, you get that sorted out, and he's good to go.
All right, well, that'll do it for the power rankings for week 5. Another controversial week. We'll try to put the polls in the group me, see who I think is most overrated, most underrated, which probably think we're the most overrated since we're the ones doing the rankings. But that's okay. So we'll be up next with the interview with the winner of the Monday night game close, which is Collin, and he's also the 2015 DJ champion. So y'all stay tuned for that. All right. So this week we welcome in Collin to the podcast, the 2015 DJ Rayborn Memorial. Are you ready for some football, Fantasy Football League Golden Football Trophy Award winner? Collin, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We had to get Collin on after the thrilling Monday night win last night. So it will be Monday night when y'all are listening to this on Thursday, but last night in our time now, our alternate timeline. So Collin, take us through it. What were your thoughts as the game was going down?
Well, it started off not great. Eckler looked like he was out with some kind of an ankle injury or something, which got me terrified because I did not think Mike Williams would have that great of a night. He didn't. But then he came back and just kind of ran roughshod over the field. And at the very end, he scored that touchdown, and that kind of sealed the deal for me. So at the end, it felt great, but it was a pretty rough process getting there.
Yeah, it was one of those awkward situations where you were behind, but you had Eckler, who was in theory the best player, but also he had Eckler's quarterback and Mike Williams' quarterback. So it was a very awkward game. Like, you needed some weird things to happen coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, Herbert, he found every receiver but Mike Williams. So
there's a little regression there. My question about the matchup is, you pulled it out in part because you started the Panthers defense against the Cowboys. I would just like your reasoning there.
Well, I just
not
thought
holding
that they
back
had
with
a
these
better
questions.
chance. Well, I thought they had a
Listen,
better
we have to
chance
ask the
than
tough
New
questions
England.
here.
I mean, I thought I was being really clever with it because New England was playing Tampa Bay, and I thought Tom Brady would just go lights out. Ultimately, New England scored 0 points, which is a heck of a lot better than the -6 that the Panthers scored. So I don't think I'll be making that mistake again, but who knows?
I understand it. Like the Panthers defense has been good. It's just kind of weird. The Cowboys are a really good offense. So
I don't know if I would have played Patriots defense against Tampa Bay.
It was a tough choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely been wary to start the Patriots defense, but they have a good schedule coming up, I think. So
All right. So my question is, I was kind of looking back through the records, and you've had a lot of solid seasons in a row. So each of the last 2 years, you've been 8-5. And the 2 years before that, you're 6-7. You're 8-5 the year before that. You're 7-6 the year before that. So you've been pretty much at least average, never near the bottom, and then 8-5 gets you in the playoffs. So that's what you've been the last couple of years. Is that your strategy? Like, is your draft strategy pick some solid, consistent guys, try to build depth, or do you think it's just worked out that way?
I think it's probably a little of both. I mean, y'all have said it before that consistency is key in fantasy football. And I like having a really good quarterback. And if I can get a couple running backs that I know will get me the vast majority of points, then I'll be in a good spot. Spent $15 on drawing a blank.
Josh Allen?
But the Bills quarterback. Yeah, Josh Allen. It's been a long day. But I spent $15 on him, and I was hoping he'd have an MVP type season. Started off a little rough, but I think he's picking it up. And then the two running backs, you've got Eckler, who obviously just he's every game he's solid, and then Jonathan Taylor, which has not been as consistent, but I think he's going to be scoring more points in the future. So that's kind of been the strategy I've been running with, and it's turned out to be at least good enough to put me in the playoffs. And once the playoff starts, it's all bets are off.
yeah, you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. What is the status of his situation in your locker room? Because we know last week you're a little wary and a little unenthused with his performance, but he had a good week this week.
Yeah, I think he just needed some tough love. I think he needed to know that his spot on the team was not guaranteed. And so he took the message, and he's right back on track. So we're in good standing.
Jacksonville should hire this guy.
Right.
Yeah. So I like what you said. I mean, I think that's true. If you can get a couple of running backs who you got pretty good value on both of them. On Eckler, I know Joe's been very vocal about how he wishes he would have got Eckler at that value. And then, Jonathan Taylor, you got good value. And then the two of those combined with Josh Allen, your floor in theory is just so high every week. And it's kind of been that way. You're 3-1. Both Joe and I have been rising on your team. But I think the other thing, that maybe wasn't necessarily your strategy, but just sort of turned into your strategy is that you hit on Marquise Brown and Mike Williams, who, well, we'll forget about last night for a second, but who look like values at the receiver position late in the draft. And that's been huge for your team so far.
Yeah, it was a lot higher on Mike Williams. Obviously, Hollywood Brown, you never really know, but I think, he's been the model of consistency, funny enough, and they've just been carrying those two flex positions. And it's a good thing because, as far as wide receivers, there's not really anything else that I've got there. There's Terrace Marshall on the bench, but that's kind of it. So I need them to produce.
Yeah, we talked about how we've been rising on your team. What was your reaction to the preseason podcast of me and Parker both ranking your team last?
I probably would
have
have.
him 11.
Whatever, I had
Parker
him
did
last.
have
You had
me
him
11.
11th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give some
Net
credit.
of 11 and a half or whatever, average of 11 and a half.
I mean, I get it. Like I would have probably put myself there too. Injuries were pretty rough early on, and there were a lot of question marks that I think had to come through at some point. And thankfully, those question marks have, to the most part, been answered. There's still some questionable patches on my team, but I think, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of unknowns. So I don't blame y'all at all.
It's clear that the tough love strategy of firing the entire training staff preseason and then listing John Taylor on the trade board middle of the game has been productive. It's a good.
I don't play around. Yeah.
Yeah, hard-nosed coaching.
You want to fire. You want to fire up your team's ass.
Right. So my other question. So you probably don't know this because I didn't know this either. But so the last time you were 3-1, start the season through 4 games, was 2015, where you went on to win the championship. And you've had several years in a row where you've been kind of hanging around 500 and then just made a little push at the end, made it into the playoffs. But 2015 was the last time you got off to this good of a start. Actually, that season you started 4-1. So what do you think? Is this another championship run? Do you feel like it's going to come together?
It could be. I mean, there are some pretty tough competitors at the top of the board, but I like where my team's at least the starters. And, like I said, there's some questionable patches. I've got like 3 tight ends that I don't really have a starter there yet, and 2 defenses that any day could just implode. So I would like to see some more consistency at the bottom, but the top looks awfully good. Yeah.
Any more questions, Joe?
No, I think that's it for me.
So my last question, and I remember that I wanted to ask you about this. So, we always talk about the Philip Lindsay championship game between Joe and Hunter. That was so close, but I had forgotten until I was going back through to look that the championship game the year after that, which would be 2019, which is the first year that Grant won, between you and Grant, was also just brutally close. I think you lost by 1.
The Aaron Jones game.
Yeah, Aaron Jones
I
had
haven't
a huge
forgotten.
run.
Yeah,
that was against the Vikings on Monday Night Football. So my question is there some bad blood between you and Grant? Like you were at the core of Grant building a dynasty, really, because he's got 2 championships in a row now, and now he's 4-0. So what do you think? Is there some bad blood there? Is there a rivalry brewing?
I will say this. Grant and I play at the last game of the season, regular season, and everybody ought to be keeping a close eye on that game. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Circle the calendars.
Circle the calendars.
Whatever. I don't know what week that is, but week 14. All right, I like that. So now let's move on to the picks segment. So we were just talking about this off the camera, but pick segment has not been going so well recently. So last week Joe was 3-3, which led the way. I was 2-4, and Austin, the guest picker, was 1-5. So our records on the season stand at Joe at 13-11, me at 9-13, and the guest pickers combining for 8-10. So really, if we're picking your team, it's probably a bad sign more than anything. But that won't stop us from trying. So we will, go ahead and start with the week 4 picks, and the highest projected over under, which I believe, or the week 5 picks, and the highest projected over under, which I believe, just glancing at it right now, is Grant. So Grant, he's been dominant, and now he's at the highest projected points, and he gets Hunter. He's a 10-point favorite. Hunter in this matchup is 9-5 all time. So Hunter's kind of dominated this matchup. And of course, it's a rematch of last year's championship that Grant pulled out. Hunter is 7-3 in week 5. So he does like playing in week 5. And a couple of historical notes from this matchup. So Grant is 172.8 points away from 14,000. Normally, I don't start listing them until they're about 150 points away, but I figured, it's within reach. And then he's also 1 win from his 80th win, and his 150-point game from being the first team to have 5 150-point games. And he's got that 8-game win streak he brings into this.
And Hunter is a 125-point game away from his 20th. So he'll be the second team to get 20 all-time 125-point games. None of that really matters too much. But Grant is a 10-point favorite in this one. Joe, what do you think about that?
It's tough to pick against Grant, but I'm gonna go with Hunter in the points +10. I think he can keep it close. I think, there's just got to be a little bit of, Grant's got to be due for a little bit of regression in the mean. Not to say he might not win, but I like Hunter with the double-digit point spread.
What you, Collin?
I like Grant to win it. His team is just so solid. I mean, top to bottom. But I agree with Joe. I think it's going to be a lot closer than the spread might indicate.
I don't know. I mean, Hunter's missing his best player. He did get a nice win,
But he might not be.
He might not be. That's true. I'm operating on the assumption that he will be. So I'm going to say that Grant covers the 10 points. We keep telling Grant it's too many points. We said that against Morgan. We all said that last week against UConn. Or no,
Austin. No, Austin.
Yeah. We all said that against Austin, and both times he's covered easily. So Grant is no stranger to big spreads and no stranger to winning those games. So I will take Grant. Even though it goes against the analytics, Hunter's dominated that matchup.
There's revenge for the championship game for Hunter from last year.
It's true. All right, so the next matchup, we got Thomas against Ben. So Thomas is an 8.5-point favorite, projected second most points in the league, but Ben is leading this matchup all time 6-5. And Thomas has also struggled in week 5. He's 3-7, which actually is not really that bad for Thomas. That's kind of what his record is every week. But the other thing that I noticed was that these two teams have alternated wins every matchup. So Ben won the last one, which means Thomas should win this one. For 11 straight matchups, they've gone back and forth, win-loss, win-loss. If Ben scores a 125-point game, it'll be his 5th time doing so, which will make him the 12th team to that mark. So Thomas is an 8.5-point favorite. Collin, what do you think about that line?
Oh, I mean, that's a rough line to go against, but I'm actually going to pick Ben. I mean, he and I have had somewhat of a little bit of rivalry the last few years, and I think he's going to squeeze it out. This game's really important for him.
After I got memed to death by Thomas in the group me, I think I'm gonna pick him. I mean, I just like Thomas's team. No, I like Thomas's team like pretty heavily more than Ben, and so 8 points or 8.5 points I think is too few. I think that Dalvin matchup against Detroit seems like a nice bounce back. So yeah, I like Thomas.
Yeah. I don't know about this one. This feels like a good line, 8.5 here. But what I am going to go on is that they've been alternating victories back and forth. Ben got the last one, so I guess that means Thomas gets this one. I think if he wins, he'll cover the 8.5. That's not really that many points in a fantasy football game. There's not that many of them that are side by single digits. So I think if Thomas wins, he covers, and so I'll take Thomas. So the next points on the week is going to be Joe and I. Joe's favored by 0.4, so essentially a pick 'em. Joe's 7-5 against me all time, and he's won the last 6 of those matchups. So I started out 5-1 against Joe, and now he's won 6 straight. But I have done well in week 5, so I'm 8-2 in week 5 all time. It's Joe's 150th game. He'll be without David Montgomery. Joe, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I do have Damian Williams, so hopefully that's not really much of a drop off. And really, I hope I can get AJ Brown back. I'm gonna say, you got mad at me last week for this with Hunter. As of right now, I don't think AJ Brown's gonna play, so I'm gonna pick you. If he does, then yeah, I think maybe it'd be closer, but I don't think he's gonna play. I'm gonna go with you.
All right, Collin, what do you think?
I think this one's a tough coin flip. I think it could go either way on so many factors, and I actually think this is going to come down to defense. And Joe, you have the Titans defense, is that right?
Well, we haven't done waivers yet at the time of recording, so we'll see.
I'm just saying, if it comes down to defense, I like the Titans defense against Jacksonville. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. So I don't like to pick myself a whole lot. But I do like that Joe's entire team will be done by 3 o'clock. And I'll still have Tyreek and Mahomes on Sunday Night Football. That will at the very least
Yeah, that's not
be fun to watch.
gonna be fun. No,
You
it
know,
will not be fun to watch.
because even if I'm down by 65, I'll sort of think I have a chance. And so, you know, I don't know. It's a toss-up game. I feel like Joe's line is really good. I think Damian Williams will step right into David Montgomery's shoes. So I'm gonna pick Joe. But I don't think I'll be out of it coming to Sunday Night Football. And so hopefully I can pull one out. I'm sort of due here. That's my team name, but 6 in a row against Joe. I feel like I might be due for one, but I'm gonna still pick Joe. I'm gonna keep going with never picking myself in anything. So the next matchup, Collin, is you. So you're a big 12.1 point favorite over Austin. Austin, however, leads the matchup all the time at 4-3. But he has struggled in week 5. So he's 1-5 in week 5. And whoever wins this will reach a milestone. So Collin, if you win, you'll be the 6th to 70 wins. And if Austin wins, he'll be the 12th to 40 wins. So Collin, how are you feeling about this matchup with Austin?
I actually really like it. I got Evan Ingram in at tight end. I think he's going to build on his production. I like Josh Allen as always. I think my 2 running backs are doing really well. So I think everything's looking up for me.
So you're gonna take yourself with the 12?
I will. Oh, absolutely.
I like it. I like the confidence.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree only because Austin's 2 running back matchups, Najee and Clyde, they're playing the Broncos and the Bills. That's 2 really good defenses. I think that could be rough. And so if he doesn't get good games out of them, I think it's gonna be tough for Austin to have a good week. So I'm gonna take Collin also.
Okay, I like that.
And Kittle is first game with Trey Lance, so who knows about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely up in the air. 12 points is a big line. That's kind of what moves it for me. So, this is going to be my too many points pick of the week. I would be tempted, to go Grant -10 against Hunter, who we also think is a really good team. But this is just too many points here. Collin, I like your team. I think you win it outright, but I think that Austin will cover the 12. So I'm going to take Austin in this one. All right, next up, we got Zach against Nick. So Zach, 0-4, but he's coming in as the favorite, 2.3 point favorite over Nick. He's done well in this matchup all time, 9-5. This is his most played matchup. He plays Nick twice a year, every year, pretty much. And he's also 6-1 in week 5. And he's won the last 5 matchups between him and Nick. So all the analytics pointing to Zach here. He's 8.6 points away from becoming the 11th team to 10,000 points. It's an actual real milestone there, not a made up one. He's also a 100-point game from his 55th 100-point game, which will make him the 5th team to that mark all time. He is on currently a franchise record 6-game losing streak. And meanwhile, Nick comes in 1 win away from the 65th win, which makes him the 8th team to that mark. I think, the analytics, he's due. I take Zach minus the 2.3. I feel pretty good about it. Nick's team has been struggling recently, just coming off the lowest points in the league. I do kind of feel like his receivers are due for a breakout week, but I'm going to take Zach.
I'm also going to take Zach. Nick has let me down too many times. I keep ranking him higher than he should be. And, I think it's time to cut bait. Zach has just had a couple really tough losses last week, obviously. So, yeah, I'm going to take Zach. I think it's pretty cliche, but he is due. He has by far the most points against, right?
Yeah, he's averaging 140 points against or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's to say he's due is an understatement. I know just as well as anybody that he's got a really tough team, and so I'd pick Zach. He's ready for a win.
We're all on Zach this week. Actually, Joe, I misspoke there. So Collin is the one, or not Collin, Austin is the one who is having 140 points a game putting this in.
Oh yeah, that's I guess because
He
he
just
put
gave
me
up
in week 1 and Grant. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
he's
yeah,
kind
he
of running
played-
a couple
yeah.
of buzzsaws.
Yeah.
But Zach is second. He's averaging 127 points allowed per game.
Okay.
So
That makes
that's, an equally, not equally, but also a very big number. And so our last matchup of the week, we got Dan coming in as a 7.8-point favorite against Morgan. This is traditional Dan stuff. He's projected the low scoring game of the week. He leads this matchup 6-5 all time, but Morgan's done well in week 5. He's 7-3. Dan's 44.9 points from his 13,000th, which will make him the 15th of that mark. And he's a win away from his 75th win, which would also be the 5th most in the league. And Morgan's a 100-point game away from his 45th 100-point game, which will make him the 18th of that mark. Dan this week, last week we saw him giving the veterans a day off, and he came home with the loss. This week, they're getting back on the practice field. He's got his lineup in. Dan minus 7.8. How do you feel about that line, Collin?
I like it. Neither of these teams really excite me too much, to be honest. But I like Dan's team better. I'll say that.
Yeah. I think, this is a classic Dan spot where, he gets Morgan without Joe Mixon or probably without Joe Mixon, so I would imagine we're recording this Tuesday night. I would imagine Morgan is going to pay a pretty hefty sum for Samaje Perine. I'm not positive on that, but I feel pretty good about that. So I imagine we'll be in Morgan's starting lineup. So I'm going to take Morgan with the points. I think Dan wins close, as Dan is one to do.
You think Morgan covers, but Dan wins?
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. I think that you're definitely right, Collin. These are, the two and two teams that kind of make you scratch your head a little bit. These are, neither of them has been tremendously convincing in their wins this year. I say that Morgan did have the best week a couple weeks ago, but I think that this one comes down to Morgan just doesn't have the running backs to compete with Kamara and Henry. And so if Dan can get even a little bit out of his receivers, I think that this should be his matchup to lose. So I will take Dan with the points, or Dan minus the points. Colin, what'd you pick for that game again? I forgot already.
I got Dan on the points and the win.
Okay, so the two of us are going with Dan. They're I just checked. They're 8th and 9th in scoring, despite being 2-2. So definitely the least convincing 2-2 teams out there. All right, well that wraps up our pick'em segment. So we'll see how we do next week. If we can card an over 500 week would be nice. Collin, anything else you wanted to say before you go?
No, tough love wins it.
That's right. Yeah, that hard-nosed management. And of course, we're going to circle that week 14 game on the calendar with Grant. That revenge game from the championship 2 years ago. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and thank y'all for listening to the 5th episode of Are You Ready for a Podcast, the official podcast of the Are You Ready for Some Football Fantasy Football League, presented by AT&T. Apparently, free product placement. All right. Oh yeah, and like, comment, and subscribe, and leave a review.